In the year 1258, the army that once spread terror from Asia to Europe, the Mongols, marched south. They had leveled the iron fortresses of Persia. They had crushed the strongholds of Europe. And now, their target was a small nation called Daiviet, a land still young, a dynasty barely established. Would this place vanish from the map? Or would it create a miracle that stunned the entire world? What happened when the Mongol horsemen reached Tanglong? Why did an invincible army retreat after only a few months?
United.
And how did Daiviet, seemingly fragile, achieve the very first victory against the mightiest foe of the century? This is the story of the first war of resistance against the Mongols, a heroic chapter in the ancient history of Vietnam. Don't miss it. And make sure to subscribe to Vanished Empires to uncover the battles that shaped the course of human history. At that time, Daiviet had just shifted from the Lai dynasty to the Tran. The royal court was newly established, its power not yet secure. Society was still unsettled. And above all, a fledgling dynasty now faced the strongest enemy on the planet. The army of Daiviet had courage, but they had never encountered a force like the Mongols. Light cavalry, long spears, arrows fired from horseback. They moved like the wind, striking fast, retreating swiftly, giving their foes no chance to breathe. Across Asia, mighty empires had fallen one after another. Western Xia, the Jin, and even the southern Song trembled before the Mongol onslaught. In the west, the mighty fortresses of Persia, Kiev, and Budapest all were ground to dust. All of Europe lived in fear of the horsemen from the steppe. They were called the Invincible Army, a storm of steel that had never stopped anywhere. And then, in the early months of 1258, that storm turned south. Ngat Luom Haptai led 30,000 Mongol troops. Crossing the border, they thundered into Daiviet. January 1258. Massive clouds of dust rose from the north. It was not a sandstorm. It was the Mongol cavalry. 30,000 horsemen, clad in dark leather armor, bows slung across their backs, long spears glinting under the winter sun. They advanced toward Ben Lung Nguyen, a vast plain where the Daiviet army had built their first line of defense. On the other side, the Tran forces stood in formation. Wooden shields raised in a wall, spears braced and pointing forward. Faces tense, but eyes burning with resolve. Behind them, the war drums pounded, relentless. Then, silence. A deathly stillness blanketed the field. Suddenly, from afar, the Mongol war horns roared like thunder. The cavalry surged forward. Thousands of hooves pounded the earth, shaking the ground itself. Arrows rained down from horseback, ripping through the sky. The soldiers of Daiviet braced themselves. Arrows slammed into shields, pierced armor, tore into flesh. Mongol lances drove through the lines, breaking their ranks. Ben Lung Nguyen quaked. The Daiviet defenses were pierced. Dust, blood, fire, and the cries of men merged into a storm of chaos. The Tran warriors fought with fierce determination, but under the crushing might of the Mongols, they were forced to withdraw. Tanglong lay exposed before the foreign invaders. But this was not the end. This retreat opened the board for a new game. A trap the Mongols did not yet see. Tanglong. Flames blazed red across the rooftops. Thick black smoke rolled upward, blanketing the sky. The Mongol army stormed into the capital like a raging tempest. The palace lay in ruins. The streets stood empty. The people had abandoned everything, retreating to the villages and fields. Ngat Luom Haptai entered Tanglong in triumph, but also in isolation. No food. No supply lines. Only a hollow city. The Mongol cavalry, long accustomed to plundering wealthy lands, now faced deprivation. Day after day, bellies ached with hunger, horses grew thin, soldiers weakened. They became strangers, lost on a land where the people refused to cooperate in any way. Meanwhile, outside the city, the Tran dynasty had not collapsed. Their retreat was deliberate. Their forces remained intact, rallying the people in the countryside. The villagers supplied them, sheltered them, and helped rebuild their defenses. Tang Long had fallen, but Daiviet had never bowed. And then, as the Mongols grew weary, the moment to strike had come. A decisive battle was about to erupt at Đông Bộ Đầu. If you don't want to miss this climax, make sure to subscribe to Vanished Empires right now. Because the battles to come will make you feel as though history itself is unfolding before your very eyes. Đông Bộ Đầu. The riverfront ran red, its waves crashing and churning. The sky at dusk hung dark and heavy, as though warning of a storm about to break. In the distance, long lines of Mongol warships lay at anchor, black banners fluttering in the wind. They believed Daiviet was exhausted. They drank, they feasted, they reveled in their plunder. But then, from downstream, small Vietnamese boats appeared. Fragile, simple. And yet strangely, each one was covered with straw, soaked in oil. Flames burst to life. These were no warships. They were colossal fire arrows, hurtling straight toward the Mongol fleet. In an instant, the river became an ocean of fire. Flames consumed enemy ships, towers of black smoke spiraled upward, blotting out the sky. The crack of splitting wood, the screams of panicked soldiers, the shrill cries of terrified horses filled the air. From the shore, the war drums of Daiviet thundered. The Tran soldiers surged forward in unison. Arrows rained down like a storm. Spears and blades flashed in the firelight. The battle cry of the defenders shook the riverbank. The Mongol cavalry, once invincible on the steppe, now floundered in chaos, trapped in fire, smoke, and water. They panicked. They fled. The army that had sown terror across Asia and Europe now scattered in desperate retreat. Đông Bộ Đầu was not merely a battle. It was the declaration of a nation. Daiviet will never submit. The river of fire at Đông Bộ Đầu extinguished the illusion of Mongol invincibility. Their shattered forces fled in panic. Uriankadai was forced to retreat north. An invasion that seemed destined to erase Daiviet ended in just a few months. The mightiest empire of the age was forced to bow and admit defeat. For Daiviet, this was more than a victory. It was a declaration that even a small nation could resist the greatest power on earth. It was a symbol of resilience, strategy, and the strength of an entire people united. But history did not end here. The Mongols would not accept defeat so easily. Barely 2 decades later, they would return. This time, not with 30,000 men, but with hundreds of thousands. A bloodier, more ferocious war was about to erupt. And that is the story of 1285, when Tran Hung Dao and the people of Daiviet together carved the next immortal epic. If you want to witness that earth-shaking battle, subscribe now to Vanished Empires. The journey into the ancient history of Vietnam has only just begun.